Sorry, I don't love you. Afraid I've grown accustomed to. Cause with you, something isn't wrong, something isn't wrong, something isn't right. I wish you could be.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is back, as is Tim Matthews. We are continuing with the Mission Impossible movies. Today we are talking all about the fourth movie, also known as Ghost Protocol. I think, Tim, this is the first time they've started giving the movies sort of these subtitles.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time that they started giving them subtitles, which I was really excited about because, I mean, frankly, just kind of putting a number on these movies is kind of boring. So I always enjoy. I'm glad the Marvel movies have started doing a lot more of the subtitles as well. It's just more fun.
Yeah, I think Iron Man is the only one that sort of did a 1, 2, and 3 there. And then with Captain America, it was, the first Avenger, Winter Soldier, Civil War, and that really makes it a lot more entertaining. And, they even did that after Thor 2, I believe. So it was Thor Ragnarok for the third one and everything. I definitely agree. It's like, do we really just need numbers to know just how many movies you have been doing? Or can we get a little more creative with it? So I definitely like that this one is called Ghost Protocol. And, we're just going to jump right on in here. And the casting is one of the main things we've been talking about because, like we mentioned before, Ethan and Luther are the only two characters who have showed up in all of the movies. And in this one, Luther has a very, very small part. He's technically not even in the credits when they roll. So it was one of those things where we're seeing a couple familiar faces because you still have Simon Pegg in this movie as well. And I think that helps with the sort of transitions that have been occurring off screen, so to speak, because when we start with this one, we have a bunch of people who we haven't seen before. We have Jeremy Renner in this one as Brant, and you have Josh Holloway, who does not last very long at all.
I know. It was I remember I think he was in I remember when it was announced that he was in it. And at the time I was still a fan of Lost. I hadn't watched the last season yet. And I think he was in like the trailers and stuff. So I was like super excited. I was like, oh, this is great. I really like this guy. And then I remember sitting in the theater and just right in the beginning, he just gets shot. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and a couple of the other big name actors in this, Paula Patton plays Jane, and Michael Nyquist, I believe that's how you're pronouncing it, even though it looks like it's spelled with a V instead of a U there, but he plays Hendrix. And we do see a lot of foreigners in this movie again, which is something that we had going with the first one, because that one, it was like, okay, we know a handful of these actors just from stuff that we have seen over the years, but this one, it was the same way. It's like, okay, yes, Jeremy Renner is Hawkeye, and obviously Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. Like that needs no explanation there. And Simon Pegg has sort of been one of the recurring characters as Benji, and we see him in the next two movies as well, I believe.
Yeah. He being introduced in the third one, he really comes into his own in this movie, and he's for the next two, he is very, very much still a really key member of the team, which I really enjoy. I think he's a great fit. And Luther, I was like you saying that Luther, not being in this one as much. I remember when we were talking about some of the earlier movies, and it was, Luther being kind of the other character that went along with Ethan. I was trying to like bite my tongue because I was like, he's barely in Ghost Protocol, but I don't want to say anything. But thankfully Luther does come back. I don't think that's really a spoiler. You can look at the cast sheets, but you would think with Simon Pegg being like the tech guy, that bringing in Luther, that maybe you don't need both of them. But as we see in this one, Simon Pegg is now like a field agent, which is a lot of fun because he's definitely not as experienced as everyone else and is kind of in over his head and just excited to be part of the team.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good place to dive into the story here because, Benji is a little out of his element with being in the field and he kind of knows it. And then you have Brant who comes along, Jeremy Renner's character, and we don't see him until about, I want to say like 35 minutes in on the movie or something like that. There's a good chunk of time that passes before we're even introduced to him, and he is sort of this Jack Ryan-esque character where he's playing an analyst, but he's not really an analyst at heart. He has some moves of his own, as we learn later in the
Yeah.
movie. But, this one, it revolves around the Ghost Protocol, which is sort of them going out on their own, the 4 agents who are left in the IMF because everyone has been disavowed. So they are doing this without any sort of direction or orders from someone above them. It's like, they break Ethan out of prison, and he's sort of the one making all of the decisions, which he kind of did anyway before. It's not like he really listened all that well. So it's one of those things where it makes sense that you wouldn't even bother having, someone. Technically someone does show up who would technically give Ethan orders, and he does give Ethan a mission, but then he is killed immediately after, and that's the secretary.
Yeah. Oh, and that's I don't remember his, the actor's name, but of course, fans of the Dark Knight trilogy will recognize him as
Tom
Falcone.
Wilkinson is his name.
That's it. Yeah, and he's always good, but I love that little scene, and that speech is so perfect because once again, just like as we started getting introduced to a bit of a very well-balanced humor in the series in 3, that definitely carries over into this one, and I think the humor is even upped a bit. But I love when Tom Wilkinson starts giving the mission, and it starts out the way he's saying it is like he's giving him the mission, but he's not giving him the mission because he can't officially give him the mission. And I love Jeremy Renner's just reaction to everything he's saying. He's just kind of like, "Wait, sir, what are you saying? Wait, no, like you can't be giving the speech." And then of course everything goes to hell. But it's such a great little scene, and I think this series does that really well. Is just giving us actors that they inject into the scene in a small part, and they kill it, and then they're gone, and you kind of miss them. But again, the movie just keeps moving. But he was a really great addition. But we never seem to get to hold on to the people in charge in these movies.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way by the 4th movie here. And, a lot of this story surrounds this idea that, they don't know where the nuclear codes that were stolen from Hanaway, who is Josh Holloway's character at the beginning there.
Right.
They don't know where these are going to end up. And we see that Hendrix is the guy they end up going after. And you also have Sabine Moreau, who is the assassin. So she doesn't have a huge role in the movie. We basically get 2 significant scenes with her, and then it's all about going after Hendrix and making sure that that missile does not hit its target. And, because it's a Mission Impossible movie, they cut it close, and we'll certainly be diving a little deeper into the action scenes after this. But, Hendrix really is the main bad guy in this, and you can argue that Sabine is also one because she assassinates Hanaway, and then we get that scene where they are sort of doing this parallel between the 2 meetings in the hotel rooms, and they're literally one floor apart, so they're happening literally in like the same room, just right apart from each other by one floor. And you get this moment where they're definitely sort of just winging it at this point. It's like they kind of have a plan, but it's not necessarily a solid plan, because if one little thing goes wrong, this whole thing is blown. And I think they sort of show that on everyone's face at one point. Maybe not Ethan's, because he is so used to doing all of these crazy things.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you see Benji, inflating a fake arm, and
Yeah.
he's just sort of like trying to keep it as hidden as possible, and he
Yeah.
sort of gives Jane this look when he's serving the tea, and you can tell they're both a little nervous, especially Benji, though, because like we said, this isn't his forte necessarily. Obviously, Jane can handle herself if things go wrong, and
Yeah.
to an extent, Benji can too. We see that he is a good shot at some point, but fighting, maybe not so much.
Yeah. And we do kind of get a little bit of Ethan being almost like out of his element in when they're talking about that we need to go in from go into the server room from the outside.
Yes.
And then he says, what floor are we on? And what does he say, like 157th or something? And the look on Ethan's face when he just like stops and he's like, 150, what? And it's definitely a running theme of this entire movie, that here's a team that we know we've come to know throughout the 3 movies so far. They're the impossible mission force. It's, everything that goes wrong, there's another plan. There's a backup plan. This, it's that everything is kind of well thought out, even if everything goes to hell, for the most part, at least. But in this one, I feel like even when Ethan's first broken out of prison and he goes up to the phone and he gets the little mission through the phone, and he starts to walk away, and you're waiting for the phone to self-destruct, and it doesn't, and he kind of pauses, this little comical moment, and he walks back, and then it self-destructs. And then of course throughout the movie they're sent on their own, and here they have all this tech, but the tech doesn't really work that well. The gloves malfunction quite a bit in the worst way possible when he's hanging on the side of a building, and the face masks, of course, don't work. So it's this fun running theme throughout the movie that it's just like they now have to figure things out basically kind of with their wits, because all the tech that they kind of have come to rely on, it just doesn't work. And now it's fun to see them have to scramble, like with an inflatable arm. You have all this fancy tech, and then there's an inflatable arm. Like, so I really enjoy that theme throughout the movie. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and in this one too, we still get a lot of that comedic element to it as well, because we have these moments with Benji where sometimes just his facial expression is enough of that comedic relief to sort of ease the tension in the room for a brief moment. And then, Jeremy Renner has a lot of comedic moments in this as well, especially when he's in that magnetic suit and he's trying,
Oh yeah,
he's getting ready to jump, and he's like, okay, I have to jump, right?
yeah.
Do I jump now?
Stretches and, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just a great moment, because you can tell he's like, okay, I know I have to do this, but I'm not 100% certain it will work. And since he's an analyst, numbers matter to him. And Benji's like, I'm pretty sure. You're good. You're good.
Yeah. And it's that scene's a lot of fun, because usually what we've come to see in these movies is the more outrageous stunt type things, Ethan would be the one doing it. But in that scene, he's at the big fancy party, kind of running point and not doing anything action oriented or really dangerous at all. And so it's fun to see the roles flipped, and seeing Jeremy Renner's character Brant, have to do this completely outrageous thing, especially. This was after the Ethan climbs the building, right? I think so.
Yeah, I believe so, because Ethan flew back in through the window and Brant was still there. So this was later on when they went to Mumbai, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so Brant kind of got out of doing the whole window thing, because Ethan's like, well, who needs to do it? And Benji's like, "Oh, I'm the tech. I got to be on the computer." And Benji had made fun of Brant earlier by just calling him the helper, and so Brant's like, "Well, I'm the helper," and points to Benji. So then he's out, and Ethan is naturally the one who has to go out on the building. So now it's kind of backfired on him, and he has to do the dangerous thing with this giant, super sharp piece in the middle, which is and his landing. I'm just thinking about this now when he drops down and he's all like kind of like his body all spread out, floating there. This is now the fourth movie in a row that we get a nod to that iconic scene in the first film.
Yeah.
Where in the second one it was after he goes through the giant tower and then stops right at the bottom, and then in the third one is when he goes over the wall and he flips over and stops right before the ground. So I don't remember if we get something like that in the other two. I'm going to be excited to rewatch those and look for that now.
Yeah, it's interesting how they sort of tie these all together with just little moments like that. It's not even necessarily a through line plot wise or anything like that. It's just one of those things where, hey, nearly falling on your face is quite a common thing here.
Yeah. We get another nod to the first one with the long-haired guy who worked for Max, and he puts the black sack over Ethan's head when they go and meet the arms dealers. So that's another fun tie-in as well.
Yeah, so, the basic gist of this storyline is it's more about survival than anything else. There isn't really that personal aspect to this one like there was in the third film. And it's one of those things where obviously not only do they have to survive being disavowed from the IMF, it's like they literally have to stop a missile. And it's one of those things where you're like, well, that's quite the task. Okay. And, that kind of brings us to the action scenes, because there are a ton of action scenes in this one. And I thought Ethan liked to run in 3, and wow, he runs a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think there was some website, I don't remember who did it, but somehow they factored out how far Tom Cruise runs in like all the Mission Impossible movies. I don't know how they figured it out. Obviously some mathematical equation, but it was really funny to just see. It was like, oh, he ran like 30 miles in this movie or something like that. So but I don't remember what it was for this one. But I mean, that's a Tom Cruise staple. I really feel like it's in his contract. If he's in a movie, he has to run.
That would not surprise me, especially given the kind of movies that he does. I know he's done like rom-coms in the past and everything like that, but
yeah,
more
ever since
recently
he went action star, it's all the running.
Yeah, because more recently you have not only the Mission Impossible franchise, but he's also been in Jack Reacher as the main character. So I imagine if I watch that movie or multiple movies, I don't know how many exactly he's in, I'm sure there will be more of Tom Cruise running. But these action scenes are just taken to another level. And I think a lot of that has to do with just how much technology had advanced by the time this one came around, because we still had a pretty big gap between 3 and 4, I believe. 3 was 2006 and this was 2011. So even just within those 5 years, a lot of things have improved. And if you go to the IMDb page, which I will link to in the show notes, you can see some of the behind the scenes footage or images of how they did some of these stunts. Like when he is in the fancy parking garage that I have never seen one like before in my life. He takes the car and he just drives right off the edge of the parking spot, and you get a look specifically at that moment where they do have the car suspended and they're filming like that. So you have like all of this sort of, I think it was blue behind it, not necessarily green, but
It was blue screen, yeah.
yeah, so you have him literally sitting in this suspended car from what I could tell, because he does like to do a bunch of his own stunts.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's just amazing how far he will go. I don't know about the building climb, how they did that one. They probably had a much shorter building and just had him suspended on that and climbing up it.
So actually, yesterday I watched the special features.
Okay.
And so if anyone has the Blu-ray and you haven't watched the special features, definitely give them a look, because and I'm sure someone's probably put them on YouTube as well. But no, he is actually on that building in Dubai, and he is actually all the way up there. They shot that sequence over the course of 22 or 23 days. He trained on set. He trained like on a soundstage for the climb. They set up lights shining on a metal wall to match the feel of like what the sun would be like,
and the reflection and everything.
Yeah, and so they did a lot of training, but then they went onto that building. They took out, I think, like 13 windows, and they had to set up a taped area that if any crew members or anybody, if you were past that taped area, you had to be harnessed up. And one of my favorite stories out of that sequence is that Tom Cruise is out there, doing his thing, and Brad Bird, the director, is telling the story about how they're inside setting up for the shot and just kind of getting things together. And he said they kind of really forgot that he was out there, and then they just hear this just like woo, and they just see Tom Cruise just like running along the windows, and then do that big kickoff and swing like he does in the movie, and he's just out there just having a blast all the way up there. And the main area of the sequence, they said, is higher than the Empire State Building. But Tom Cruise does make mention that while he was up on that building, he did get the opportunity to climb all the way up. So it was pretty insane. So, it's really impressive. And that was also done with IMAX cameras. The majority of the movie was not done in IMAX, but that sequence was.
I'm honestly just surprised that they were able to use the building that many days to do that, because, that's probably an extremely busy building. And I know from the looks of it, it seemed like it was a hotel, but I feel like maybe not the whole building is a hotel. I'm not really sure how that works, because I know sometimes when you have like skyscrapers in general, it's like a few floors will be one company, a few will be another company, and so on and so forth. But that definitely looked more like a hotel on the inside, at least.
Yeah. So they lucked out. Basically, I think during press for Star Trek or something, J.J. Abrams and some people, they were in Dubai, and he was like, we need to make a movie here. We need to do something here. So then when it came time to prep for this movie, JJ brought up Dubai, and Tom Cruise at the same time was like, hey, I've actually really wanted to film some stuff in Dubai. It's such a cool city. And of course the building was very enticing. They kind of lucked out that apparently at the time of making the movie, the building was still under construction. So a lot of the floors were just kind of like almost warehouse looking. They weren't finished. So that's why they were given access to certain floors for so long. And also apparently Dubai was kind of they wanted to become more of a staple for the film industry. So when this big giant blockbuster, production for Mission Impossible comes through, they apparently were like, do whatever you have to do. Like you can film anywhere you want. They kind of gave them carte blanche on that. So it was kind of like the perfect storm of timing for what they were able to do. So it certainly was worth it. The footage is unbelievable and incredible. And I'm sure they could have done it, with special effects, but as we've come to see with all these movies, Tom Cruise is really big on using practical effects, and it certainly pays off, I think. And audiences seem to think so as well.
Yeah, see, this is what I get for not having the special features available to me. So
I
much
know.
information I don't know. I'm very glad you watched them at least to correct me on this stuff.
I'm a big fan of the series. It's I don't know if that shows.
Definitely, and that's a good thing. That's certainly a good thing for this podcast. And, shortly after that scene and we go through the meetings and everything like that, he starts chasing this guy out of the building because he has what he wants. And the dust storm is coming, the sandstorm,
Yeah.
whichever you want to call it. And, I have gone camping out in the desert, and one of those has started up, not to that extent, but they really suck. And he's out there running around in it, driving in a convertible. It's like, dude, at least get a car that isn't a convertible.
I know.
That would probably make your life a little easier. And
Yeah.
just that whole sequence there of him chasing the guy down, not really being able to see, even as we're watching it, the visibility is just difficult for anyone, even as a viewer. And I think that's what really makes that scene, because it's just like you're sitting there and you're watching it and you're just like, this is so crazy. Why would you do this? Just go
Yeah.
find the guy a little later when
Yeah.
when the sand settles. And he does not give up, and we have that head-on collision with both of
Oh,
the
yeah.
vehicles as well. And that's just so well done too, because he jumps out and then he notices that the guy is not in the vehicle he stole. So he starts
Yeah.
chasing him down again, but he's limping, and
Mhm.
he pulls that off very well. I don't know if he was actually limping because he had probably actually jumped out of a vehicle himself, knowing Tom Cruise, but it was just so believable in that moment too. You're like, yeah, he would definitely have a little bit of a limp after doing that.
Yeah, he goes so into these performances that it's just the smaller scenes, but then especially the big action sequences. He knows how to sell that moment, and the whole sandstorm scene is spectacular. Like, it's kind of weird to say visually it's spectacular because as you said, it's really hard to see everything, but because of that, it is such a visually spectacular scene. It just looks so cool that he's standing there looking around trying to find him, can't see anything. There's just all this sand everywhere, and then you just have the beeping on the tracker, and then it starts picking up, and then you just see these lights, and it's such a cool sequence, and he carries that, the limp performance really well into the following chase and throughout the entire thing. He keeps it really consistent, and Ethan really gets his ass handed to him in a lot of the final sequence.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to backtrack a little bit here and talk about the prison break, though, because that sequence also has a lot of moving parts to it. You obviously have Benji opening and closing doors for him, mostly opening though. And
Yeah.
that's one of the first comedic moments we have where, Ethan is telling him to open one of the doors and he isn't doing it. So he's just making all of these hand gestures to the security camera. And you can see the security guards are like, this dude's crazy. And they're sort
like,
of frantic.
Is this seriously happening?
Yeah. And just the fact that you have all of these cell doors opening and people emerging and all of this fighting going on, it's definitely well choreographed. And it displays the chaos so well. It's not like it looks super sloppy or anything, but at the same time, it's kind of meant to look sloppy. These dudes have been locked in cells and they're just going to beat up any of the guards they can find. And we certainly see that. And then, Ethan has his moments to get his shots in so he can get away with Bogdan. And, that is not part of the plan. And Ethan isn't apparently sure that there is a plan. It's like he kind of knows generally that they're there to get him out and he was there for a reason. And, this is sort of revealed throughout the movie, which I like. We don't get that explanation right off the bat. And, there are some other things in here too, where it, he talks about his wife being dead, even though she's not really dead. It's like she faked her death. And that's sort of how we find out about that is gradually throughout the movie. And I think they did that opening scene particularly well, and it kind of just sets you up for what kind of action you'll be getting in this movie. But are there any other scenes in particular that you want to discuss as far as the action scenes go?
I mean, to add on to the prison thing for sure, it is like such a well choreographed sloppiness to it
Yeah.
because it can so easily come across choreographed and then it doesn't feel real, but it feels real. And then you have this mix of great action mixed with this humor, and right from the start they really set the tone for what this series has become and continues to be. It's like this is what you're going to get. You know, everything you kind of need to know about what kind of movie you're in, movie and series you're in for, is all in that opening sequence. And it leads right into what is so far my favorite of the opening credits, because when they're going down the running down the tunnel and he just says light the fuse, and she's got the match up against the wall, and then it just boom, and then right into the following the dynamite wire through the whole thing, and we get that great opening sequence that I love. But the in terms of other action sequences, it's not a big action sequence. I really like the scene with Jeremy Renner when and the whole team, when they're all arguing, everything's gone wrong, everyone's kind of firing on all cylinders with their performances, and Ethan comes through, and he previously had seen Jeremy Renner kind of use a bit of his agent skills and not analyst.
Right.
And so then he kind of lets him have it, and they have just this quick little mini fight where they just like they both kind of go at each other, but then take apart like each other's guns and everything, and then they're just, you know, aiming them at each other, and that's the reveal for the whole team, that it's like, who is this guy? This guy has been with us, and we thought he was this one guy, just an analyst, but clearly something else is going on here. And just that whole scene, that whole sequence, I think is so well done. The performances are great, and I think it's an example of just being able to interject a tiny bit of action into something that, as these movies have shown, especially maybe not so much the second one, but the first and the third one and this one, that the action isn't just there to be action. The action interjects with the story, and it flows with the story, and it suits it really well. And that's one of those scenes. And then the fight when the assassin gets kicked out the window. That's pretty cool. I don't know of any other action sequences that are in the movie except for the finale.
Yeah, and we certainly get a much different finale than I think we have in some of the other movies. You know, typically we have these giant action scenes before the end of a movie, but this one has a bit more of a cooling off period as they're all, you know, back in the same place together. And then we see Luther, and we get that whole conversation and everything, and we see Ethan looking on from afar at his wife, and, you know, she notices that he's watching, and then he gets a call about another mission, and he sort of just disappears in the fog. And it's one of those things where I felt like, you know, of course, in 3, we have that moment where they go back to the IMF and she meets everyone, and then they leave for their honeymoon, and that's it. But I felt like this was a bit of a longer scene to sort of give us that break after all of this action that has been going on. But I do want to talk about favorite moments here real quick before we get to our final thoughts.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite moment in mind? Because they're all like flying through my head.
Yeah. The thing is, with this one, there are a lot of really great moments, but I think one of the ones that stands out to me is in Mumbai, when we really get to see more of Jane using her skills as a spy. You know, her goal is to get the disarming code, or, you know, the neutralizing code from Anil Kapoor's character, which is, I believe it's pronounced Bridgenath. I'm not sure on that. I know
Yeah,
he said
that's
it, and I was like, wow, I am going to forget how to pronounce that in like 10 seconds because I am really bad with pronouncing names in general.
yeah,
And, just her interacting with him throughout that entire scene, it was kind of like the Italy scene that we get with
yeah,
Maggie Q and everything like that. And I was like, I really like these kind of scenes where it's not totally focused on the action aspect, but then we at the same time have Jeremy Renner as Brant going through and doing the jump and everything like that. So it kind of splits up
yeah,
the action and the just general spy work, I guess you could call it. So I really like that whole sequence there. And, the BMW that they drive up in is fantastic to look at as
yeah.
well. And they don't have
I
to blow
know.
this one up.
Yeah, that was really nice. You're absolutely right. I think the scenes when the series like truly shines. I mean, obviously they're so well known for the large, big action spectacles, but I think when we get to see those fantastic fluid like espionage scenes where everyone in the team has their individual jobs, but each person's job relies on someone else accomplishing another part of the mission. And that scene in particular, I agree, definitely is reminiscent of the Vatican sequence, which is so good in the third one. And it made me think of actually my favorite sequence in the entire movie, that I didn't think of before when I was flubbing all my words, is the Kremlin. The Kremlin's scene, I think, is 100%. I think one of the best scenes in the series. Still, like even me without saying what anything about the future movies, it's still one that I hold very high. I think Ethan and Benji are fantastic. Like I love that that's when we start to get this little bit of he just really wants to wear a mask, and he's kind of like, as they're walking up to the Kremlin, he's saying to Ethan, I'm just so excited to be part of the team, just, hey man, like this is great, this is cool. And Ethan's just like, shut up, Benji, like we're focused, we're about to walk into the Kremlin and steal nuclear codes. And then we get some really cool, fun tech with the screen, and then also the score really shines in that scene. I love the score in this movie,
Yeah.
and that scene in particular. You have that classic like Soviet Union, Russian themes that you hear in any Cold War spy movie, really, mixed with great Mission Impossible, just spy music. And that whole sequence is really great, and that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, that's definitely one worth mentioning. And it's hilarious when Benji's face ends up on the entire screen because he accidentally steps in front of the projector.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Ethan just
oh,
grabs
wow.
him, pulls him out of the way just in time before the guy turns around.
Yeah. And that was just a great moment where I
Yeah.
was definitely laughing. And at the same time, how serious this situation is. So I think they just really blend that all together really well. And,
Yeah.
like you said, there are so many scenes that could end up being people's favorites in this. I'm sure a lot of people will put, Ethan climbing up the building and having the glove malfunction, and
Mm-hmm.
he sort of just throws it off, and then we see it
Yeah.
attached to the building again like a few
Oh yeah.
seconds later.
When he jumps out the building and he's running all the way down, and then he stops, and you have Jeremy Renner just like, your rope's a little short, and he's just like, no shit.
Yeah.
Right? It really is a great blend of humor. It's like however they figured out what tone they wanted to go with, it really worked out so well, and I'm so glad that they've really stuck with it for the series going forward, because a lot of people that are fans of this series consider that it's like if they're ever talking to someone and someone's like, oh, I don't really know, I've kind of seen some of the Mission Impossible movies, but they're not really my favorites, like anyone will say, have you seen Ghost Protocol? And if they haven't, it's like, start with Ghost Protocol and then keep going, because it's it really is one that takes this series to the next level in such a fantastic, cool, serious, but fun way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, are there any final thoughts on this? I think overall for me, I really enjoyed this one. I believe when I was done watching it, I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd and everything like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to watching Rogue Nation and Fallout. Hopefully, I can catch Fallout before it is out of theaters because I know that is going to be happening soon.
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't obviously work for the theater, so I don't know, but I think you probably have like another 2 weeks at least, because it's still making bank. I think I saw it broke 700 million the other day. So and on a slow weekend, it still pulled in another 36 million. So it hasn't shown any signs of really slowing down. And I think it's might have made the most money for the series so far. I'm not sure. I could have that wrong. But yeah, I mean, as far as my final thoughts, I kind of feel like I'm a broken record, in just that this is a really great step in the series. It's definitely one of my personal favorites. It definitely is it's more about the team, and it's just spies on a mission, and they have to accomplish the mission. We don't really get a lot of background about the bad guy. He's not really much of a villain. I think there's certainly even probably the villains in Thor: The Dark World have a bit more depth than this guy. But he works and he functions well in the role that he needs to. And also, I mean, when you're following up Philip Seymour Hoffman, that's just not fair. But I think even with the villain maybe being the weakest part of the movie, it still doesn't bring the movie down at all, because the movie knows what it is, it knows what it wants to do, and I think it definitely accomplishes those things. Speaking of, Ethan actually says "mission accomplished" in the movie when he finishes, and I remember in the theater like him saying that and laughing, but being like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they went that cheesy." but then they make it even better, and that line pays off because he has that little scene with Luther where Luther's just making fun of him for saying it, and we barely got any Luther in this movie, but even in that tiny little scene, we still get that fantastic relationship between the two of them. So I'm glad that he does come back. And then the tease at the end with the next mission, they mentioned the Syndicate.
Right.
That I was very, very excited about that in the theater, having known a bit about the TV show, because that's kind of the overarching villain organization of the TV show. And so when they brought in the Syndicate, that was a really, really cool moment. And we learn a bit more about them going forward. So I'm excited for you to see those and dive into that.
Yeah.
And if anyone hears that is my dog Desmond, and he's barking at thunder because he's big and tough.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the villain, because I think it's more so important that the missile is stopped than necessarily who is launching it. But then
Yeah.
we see, this other guy who is going after Ethan the entire movie. And then at the very end there, after Ethan just barely gets it to abort, the guy's like, "Oh, so we were on the same side this entire time."
Yeah. I forgot about the detective that kind of filters throughout the whole thing. He was a nice little addition, and that's a fun little pinpoint in the end of that story at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, thank you so much for continuing to come on to talk about these movies. We have 2 more left. So
It's just so difficult. I really can't stand these movies at all. It's
such a horrible discussion we've been having for 4 straight episodes, practically.
Yeah.
I have broken them up a little here and there. So, we've done 2. I've had a different episode, 2 more. And then, I might throw in some Harry Potter in between the last 2, because that'll
Always
give me
a
some
good
more
choice.
time to see it.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with Harry Potter.
Very, very true. All right. Well, thanks again, Tim. And to our listeners, as always, thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.